All right, get ready, because we're diving deep into some seriously thought-provoking stuff today.
Yeah.
Nuclear energy
Okay.
and AI.
Interesting combo.
We're talking about the future of artificial intelligence
Okay.
and the unexpected power source.
Mm,
That might be what fuels it.
really?
Nuclear power.
That does sound like something out of science fiction.
Right.
Yeah.
But it might be more realistic than we think.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
To break it all down,
Right.
we're looking at an article by this guy, Curt Robbins.
Okay.
He's a senior technical writer. He's worked with some big names like FedEx and Microsoft,
Wow.
even Northrop Grumman. So he knows his stuff.
For sure.
And in this article, he's making these connections between nuclear power and what the future of AI could look like.
Huh, interesting. So what's the main point? Why nuclear power?
Well, one of the things that jumped out at me was how much energy AI actually uses.
Yeah, it's got to be a lot. All that processing power.
Robbins points out that data centers.
Which are basically the backbone of AI.
Exactly. Those things already use something like 1% of all the electricity in the world.
Seriously?
Yeah, and that's before AI really takes off.
Whoa. That's wild. I had no idea.
I know, right? 1% doesn't sound like a lot,
No, not really.
but think about it. That's like the entire energy consumption of, like, Argentina.
Wow. Okay, that puts it in perspective.
Yeah.
So what's the solution then? How do we fuel this AI boom without, like, overloading the grid?
Well, that's where nuclear power comes in.
Really? Nuclear, I mean, isn't that, like, a bit controversial?
It is. Robbins acknowledges all that stuff, the fear, the accidents, the waste.
Yeah.
But he makes a strong case for why nuclear could actually be the answer here.
Okay, how so?
Well, one thing he highlights is that nuclear energy is super reliable.
True. Unlike solar or wind, it's always on.
Exactly. You don't have to worry about whether the sun is shining or the wind is blowing. It just works.
Yeah, that's a good point. AI systems need constant power. They can't just shut down when the weather changes.
Right. And on top of that, nuclear power has a pretty low carbon footprint.
That's true. Which is something a lot of these tech companies are really focused on these days.
Totally. They're all about sustainability.
It's kind of ironic, though, isn't it?
What is?
I mean, nuclear energy has always been seen as this, like, environmental threat,
Yeah.
but now it might actually be a key part of a greener future.
It's definitely a different way of looking at it.
It is. And you know what else is interesting?
What?
Robbins talks about how scalable nuclear power is.
Oh, right. He uses that analogy of a glass ceiling.
Yeah, like if our energy production can't keep up with how fast AI is growing.
We hit a wall.
Exactly. Innovation just stops.
So it's not just about meeting the energy needs we have now. It's about being able to keep up with the future.
Exactly. And nuclear seems to have that potential.
At least according to Robbins.
Right. But I'm sure there are some downsides too, right?
Oh, yeah. And Robbins doesn't shy away from those at all. He lays out some of the challenges and limitations of nuclear energy, too.
Okay, like what are some of the big ones? It's interesting. Robbins, with his experience working for all those finance companies.
Like PNC Bank?
Yeah, and USAA, even Wells Fargo.
Right.
It feels like he has this unique perspective when he's talking about all this.
For sure. He's not just some, like, techie who's all about the shiny new gadgets.
Exactly.
He's actually had to deal with, like, real-world stuff. You
Yeah,
know?
complex systems and all that.
Exactly.
So it makes his take on nuclear power so much more interesting.
Especially when he talks about all these new types of nuclear reactors.
Right, like SMRs.
Yeah, those small modular reactors.
Those things sound like they could totally change the game.
Yeah, but I'm still not 100% on what makes them so different from the old school nuclear plants.
Oh, okay, well, think of it this way.
Right.
Like, imagine a traditional power plant.
Okay, those huge ones.
Yeah, giant
Right.
monolithic.
Okay.
Now, picture SMRs as, like, way more compact,
Okay.
modular.
Lego blocks.
Kinda. Like, they can be built in a factory, and then you just ship them to wherever they're needed.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, way more efficient.
Right, like assembling a power plant instead of building one from scratch.
Exactly. And because they're smaller and more,
Standardized.
yeah, they're way cheaper and faster to produce.
So we're not talking decades to get these things up and running anymore.
Nope, maybe just a few years.
That's a game changer right there.
Oh, for sure. And remember how we were talking about how scalable they are?
Yeah.
It means that companies can adapt as they grow.
Right, so like if Google's building a huge data center for AI,
They don't have to invest in this enormous power source all at once.
they can just add more SMRs as they need more energy.
Exactly. Total flexibility.
Okay, I'm starting to get it.
But I know what you're thinking.
Why?
Even if these SMRs are, like, all fancy and new,
Yeah.
There's still the whole nuclear thing.
People are scared. Right.
It's understandable.
Of course.
But Robbins talks about that too.
What does he say?
Safety is like the #1 priority with these things.
Wow.
A lot of the designs actually use like passive safety features.
What does that even mean?
It means that they rely on things like gravity and convection to keep the reactor cool if something goes wrong.
Instead of pumps and external power.
Right, so it's less likely to have a meltdown.
Gotcha.
And because the reactor core is so much smaller,
Yeah.
the risk of a major accident is lower too.
Okay. That makes me feel a little bit better.
But there's still the waste issue.
Right. Like, what do we do with all that radioactive stuff?
Robbins doesn't sugarcoat it. It's a real challenge. But he mentions these new fuel cycles that are being researched.
Advanced fuel cycles.
That's the...
What are those exactly?
Well, scientists are looking at different types of reactors that use different fuels and processes.
Okay.
And some of them have the potential to, like, recycle existing nuclear waste.
Whoa, really?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that could reduce the overall volume of waste.
That's awesome.
And there's also this thing called a thorium reactor.
Thorium. What's that?
It's this naturally radioactive element, and when you use it in a reactor, it produces way less long-lived radioactive waste than uranium.
So it's like less hazardous from the start.
Right. It's still in development, but there are lots of projects going on.
Like in China.
Yeah, they're investing heavily in it.
Interesting.
So, yeah, there are definitely solutions being explored.
Okay. That's good to hear.
But I think the biggest challenge is still going to be public perception.
Yeah, how do you convince people that nuclear is actually safe?
Well, Robbins thinks that being open and honest is key.
Right. Transparency.
Yeah, we need to talk about the risks, but also all the ways things have gotten safer.
And how nuclear could even help us fight climate change.
Exactly.
But there's got to be more to it than just talking, right?
Oh, definitely. Robbins also talks about involving communities in the decision-making process.
So they don't feel like things are being forced on them.
Right. It's about getting people on board.
But making them feel like they're a part of the solution.
Exactly.
It's kind of crazy when you think about it.
What is?
I mean, nuclear power used to be like the big bad wolf.
Right. The symbol of global destruction and all that.
Exactly.
Now it's like maybe the answer to all our problems.
Yeah, climate change and the energy crisis, and now AI.
It's a total flip.
It shows you how, like, perceptions of technology can completely shift,
Definitely.
especially when we're faced with new challenges and new needs.
And, you know, we have to acknowledge,
What's that?
like, we're not nuclear scientists or
Yeah.
energy experts or anything like that.
Nope.
We're just two people talking about this stuff.
Right, based on what we've read and learned.
Yeah, and in this case, we're relying a lot on, you know, what Curt Robbins has written.
Of course, the guy knows his stuff.
Right, but that's why it's always good to, you know.
Do your own research.
Exactly. Don't just take our word for it.
Or even Robbins' word for it.
Yeah, dig deeper, look at different perspectives.
Form your own opinions.
Exactly.
That's what this whole deep dive is about, right?
Totally. Getting people thinking,
Asking questions.
challenging those assumptions.
I think the biggest takeaway from all of this is that AI and energy are totally connected.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, you can't have one without the other.
And if AI keeps growing like it is,
Yeah.
we have to figure out how to power it sustainably.
No doubt.
It's a huge challenge.
It's like technology and society are, like, intertwined.
It's a two-way street. They influence each other.
So, like, what questions should we be asking ourselves then?
Well, when it comes to energy, it's always about trade-offs, right?
Right, like, what are the downsides?
Yeah, environmental impacts, costs, safety.
And how do those compare to the potential benefits?
Right. It's not about blindly jumping on the newest tech bandwagon.
We have to think critically.
Exactly.
And then there's the whole issue of, like, who benefits from all of this?
Right. And who takes on the risks?
And how do we make sure it's all fair?
It's complicated.
Super complicated.
But these conversations are so important.
They really are.
We have to challenge the status quo and think about different perspectives.
Because the future is in our hands, right?
It really is.
Okay, so I'm going to leave everyone with this thought.
Okay, hit me.
The future isn't something that just happens to us.
No.
We create it.
Through our choices.
Yeah, and through these tough conversations we're having.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, that's it for our deep dive today, folks.
Hope you enjoyed it.
We hope we got you thinking about the future of AI and energy.
And all the possibilities out there.
Thanks for listening.